Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Holy Sparks podcast. Salke here, super excited and grateful for part two of this series of the righteous women of the Holy Land. And I'm really excited to interview my friend, Elana Rozenfeld. And without further ado, let me go ahead and edify and introduce the woman properly, and we'll get to know her. Elana Rozenfeld is a cantor, performer, teacher, songwriter, and theater artist who grew up teaching musical theater, jazz, chazzanut, and yeshiva music, while also having a secret love of all things Sephardic. After receiving her BFA at the Tisch School of Arts in NYU, focusing on solo performance, she entered the HL Miller Cantorial School at JTS to develop mastery of her Jewish musical traditions. Since then, she has served as cantor at Park Avenue Synagogue in New York City and congregation Shirat Hayam, apropos to this week's Parsha, in Swampscott, Massachusetts. Elana has also served as the interim director of the School for Jewish Music at Hebrew College in Newton, Massachusetts. Today, Elana lives in Kiryat Tivon, Israel, with her husband and 3 children, enjoying being a freelancing, singing, performing, and songwriting mommy. Elana, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Saul. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you on here. So for people that don't know you, I want you to talk a little bit about your growing up, your youth, specifically your Jewish life as a young person.
Okay. So I grew up in New York, in the suburbs of New York in Scarsdale. We were like a middle conservative Orthodox mother and a secular father. We became conservative. And we went to a conservative shul in White Plains, Temple Israel Center. And it was also very important to them that I had a Jewish education. So I went to Salomon Schechter growing up and got an extremely formative Jewish education there. And then on Shabbat, I would go to shul and I would hear the chazan at the time, Jack Mendelson. And he would just dive in with so much emotion in his voice. And he had this deep connection to the old chazzanut, and I loved it. I loved it. I went to listen to him. No offense, Rabbi Tucker. I love him too, but I would just go to listen to him, and then I'd go home after shul and I'd imitate him and do his little moves in my room. So it later became not a surprise that I became a chazan. But at that time, that wasn't something I was thinking about. But that's what I did. And then I also grew up in the kind of the musical theater and jazz and kind of Gershwin world. My grandfather was a composer and arranger, and also in our family was Oscar Levant. He was the best pianist, famous pianist, best friend of George Gershwin. And so I just grew up with this in my family, and it was a huge part of my musical upbringing and Jewish life.
Dang, wow, I love the fact that you went home and played cantor. It's funny, our kids, specifically our daughter, will come home and play bat mitzvah with her dolls, which we think is hilarious. So that's really sweet. And so your
What's
grandfather.
even funnier is that I wasn't like 5. I was like maybe 12.
Oh, that's sweet. So wait, your grandfather was the best friend of George Gershwin? Did I hear that?
No, he wasn't my grandfather was a arranger, music arranger
Okay.
in New York City. And then in that family somewhere, I never met him, was Oscar Levant. He was George Gershwin's best friend. He was in American in Paris. I don't know if you've ever seen American in Paris, but
At what point did you decide you wanted to become a cantor and why?
skipping high school, I was just figuring myself out. In college, I went for my undergrad at Tisch School of the Arts in NYU, and I was doing solo performance, as it said in my bio, in the theater program. And my theater was also Jewish related, like not all of it, but my last one. I came back to Judaism in college, left it a little bit, and then came back with a vengeance because I just saw it through different eyes all of a sudden. Like when I came back and chose it, I saw it through different eyes, and I had become Shomer Shabbat, and I was like living a fairly observant life. I wasn't calling myself Orthodox, I was calling myself conservative, but I was observant, quite observant, and at some point I realized it would just be too hard for me to be in theater as an observant Jew in America, even in New York.
Just
And my Shabbat was really important to me, and my Jewish observance was really important to me. And I was singing, like I was developing my voice. I decided to become a cantor. And actually, I remember when I went to Jack Mendelson, I said, Cantor Mendelssohn, I think I want to become a cantor. What do you think? He said, let's go into the sanctuary for a second. And he brought me into the sanctuary and he's like, try this duet with me. And it was a duet that I knew. He's just done it for many years with different students. And I did it with my students also. And he's like, try it with me, try it with me. And I sang it. And he's like, oh gosh, you have such soul in your voice. I had no idea. Yes, of course you should become a cantor.
Like, I
So
guess you on the spot.
yeah, yeah. And so then he like started teaching me and mentoring me, and yeah.
That's so sweet. Okay. And then you ordained JTS, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you went straight to Park Avenue Synagogue right after that?
Yes.
That's a big shul, yeah? Or it was?
Big Shul.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many cantors were there?
Yeah. There was Nancy Abramson. She was functioning as the main cantor. I was like her second. And then Ozzy Schwartz, Cantor Ozzy Schwartz, who's now the senior cantor there. He was coming in, he was living in Israel and he was coming in 6 times a year, maybe, to do some things. And yeah, so the three of us were there for 2 years. And now I actually go back there. I've been going back there for the High Holy Days.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
That's a conservative shul, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Little, but yes.
Like on the West Coast, we call that conservative with a lowercase c. Like they might have drums on Shabbat or guitars, things like that.
Yeah, I would say it's like West Coast conservative even. Yeah. Yeah. Instruments.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, and then you went to a smaller shul where I visited you in Swampscott, Shirat Hayam. And so tell me about the transition from a big city to a smaller town. How was that for you?
It was quite different. It was a much bigger transition than we anticipated. Um, and the shul was really interesting though, as you probably remember. It was like not your grandmother's conservative shul. So I enjoyed that. And we were right on the beach. So that was really fun. And I served that community for 7 years. I really enjoyed my work there.
So then the big question, what made you leave the cantorate, and or was it just at the same time of going to Israel? Talk about that transition.
Okay, we wanted to make Aliyah for a long time. I felt like very committed to my job, and it was always a bad time. There were rabbinic transitions, and that I just felt like this isn't a good time for me to leave the community. And I also loved my work there, and I loved them. But at some point, we said, okay, we need to. Also, we were quite, as a Shomer Shabbos family, like there weren't many families like that for us. And as our kids were starting to become aware of that there weren't many kosher families, there weren't any Shomer Shabbat families, I started to feel like I wanted more of a community for them, a Shabbat community for them, and also to spend more time with them, because as you probably know, a cantor's role is very demanding on time, and specifically the time that I was more flexible was when they were in preschool and I couldn't really take them out, and so I wanted to seek more balance, and also to do more art, to do more singing and performing.
Out of the
So
shul or just
yes.
okay,
Yeah.
independent.
Yeah.
Any opportunities for cantorial work for women in Israel these days?
Oh, so just really quick, we were in Newton for 2 years. That was our like, if you're not yet ready to go to Israel, go to
Good.
Newton, Massachusetts.
Yeah, it's funny. Waiting room.
I was freelancing a bit as a cantor at Mishkan Tefillah, and I was at High Holy Days in Park Avenue Synagogue, and then I became the director of the cantorial program at Hebrew College, which I really enjoyed.
Mhm.
And we had a great relationship there, but after 2 years of living in Newton, we had to make Aliyah. It was now or never. We just felt like now we really need to go.
Mm.
And so we made that choice. It's funny that here I actually I use a lot of my skills that I have, even though I live in a community where there's no egalitarianism. That's not even anywhere. But there are kids there are secular children who want to read Torah at their bar bat mitzvah,
Mm.
for example. I've been teaching B'nai Mitzvah
Mm.
to both secular kids, to not secular girls, all kinds of kids. And then I'm performing my main kind of performance thing right now is a group that's being developed where it's like a tefillah. What we do is very tefillah based, and I use a lot of my kind of chazzanut, like leniencies, and my Yiddish that I learned at some point along the way, and then all of my jazz and blues stuff, and throw that in there. It's all similar modalities. So yeah, I'm actually using very much of my skills here.
Sweet. Now, I listened to an EP released last year that has like definitely jazz and blues infused, almost like rock, emo rock. And then there's also a Yiddish song on there, which I wanted to ask you about that talks about Mashiach, but that was fascinating. So is that material what you're talking about with this group? Is that part of that or is that independent?
Not really. Like that, I actually recorded that in Boston
Okay.
and then released it here in Israel. But it's part of my journey out of the cantorate and figuring out who I am as just a musician was creating an EP of original songs and plus a cover, a famous cover and a Yiddish cover. And that was part of my process. That was the first time I wrote songs. I'm actually starting to write a big project now that I probably can't even talk about yet, but it's really big. It's going to be great. And that's with my current musical partner. And
Sounds like you still fly to New York every year to lead high holidays with Park Avenue or help with that.
yeah, so I took a 2 or 3 years off, I think, and then came back this past year. With Corona, they weren't really having in person, and they weren't needing the extra cantor. And then I had a baby, and also when I was going to go, and the baby was very young, there was also an uptick of Corona, and I just didn't feel safe going. And so, but I did go this past year, and it was great.
Sweet. Okay, so tell me, what was your vision for your family's life like in Israel when you initially made Aliyah?
It's exactly what our life is like, minus the big war that's happening now. That was also part of what I imagined on some level. But we live in a quiet, like in a little kind of town. It's not like a kibbutz or moshav. It's a town with a kind of a center. It's not completely out of in the middle of nowhere. Half an hour from Haifa, but it's quiet. We see people we know all the time on the street. Like it's a our kids go to a public school that they can walk to, but it's still obviously a Jewish school, but it's still like a religious school. They get a religious education. It's not different from Solomon Schechter, it's but free. It's a mixed religious and secular and everything in between school. They have friends who are more religious than them. They have friends who are secular, and yeah, it's great. That's our where we live. And we also are kind of homesteaders, so we grow a lot of stuff at home, and we have chickens, and that's part of our life as well.
So it's
Very
a
cool.
pluralistic public school, right? Do they do tefillah at the school?
Yeah, so they do until fourth grade. They do tefillah for everybody, and then starting in fourth grade, you get to choose.
Oh,
It's tefillah or it's art or boker ruchani, spiritual morning, like morning opening, or qigong. And unfortunately, my son has not chosen tefillah, but he knows how I feel. But there's also there's religious kids who don't choose tefillah. And there's also like a extra religious education for those kids, and secular children can actually choose the extra religious education, and they can study Talmud if they want, and it's not only for religious kids. So what I love about this school is that there's some mixed schools in Israel where you're like, if you're a religious family, you're in the religious group. So it's like mixed, but not really that mixed. Here it's actually completely mixed, and you're not defined by your family. You're defined by where you want to go. It's also Montessori based, so they're very into choosing your way.
and it's K through 8 or K through 6, that one.
K through 6, and but they're trying to expand.
And then what happens? I'm curious as a parent and an educator, like what happens in middle school, high school? What are the options for you guys?
So there's middle school, which is a couple years, and then high school. And middle school, where we live, there's a religious middle school that's not far away. That's also a little bit non-standard education. They have agriculture things and whatever. And then, but it's not mixed, it's religious. but it happens to be mixed in terms of its population. So not everyone there is religious. And then there's also more standard religious schools. And then in Kiryat Tivon, where we live, there's a high school, a very big secular high school and secular middle school. So yeah, so it's like the choices are not like they're actually none of them are great choices really. So that's why our school, which is great, is trying to expand upward and outward. It's bursting at the seams.
Amazing. Okay, that sounds amazing. I want to ask you more questions about that offline later. Moving ahead, the question I'm asking everyone this month is, we talked about life before October 7th, right? Which sounds pretty idyllic and amazing. So what was your family's experience of October 7th and the days and weeks thereafter? What can you tell us about what it was like for you?
Yeah, the day itself was insane because everyone experiences it differently depending on where you live. And it was Shabbat and Simchat Torah. In America, it's Shmini Atzeret, so it's a little different feeling in Simchat Torah. We were on our way to the first ever egalitarian Simchat Torah minyan held at my friend's house. And we were all so excited about it. And we were on our way. And on our way, I pass our shul, and people see us and they say, "We're at war. There's missiles going from Gaza." And I was like, okay, there's missiles from Gaza a lot. I hate to say it. What's new? And then as I'm like walking, I see like a religious guy with tzitzit in a uniform with a big gun get into a car. And I was like, oh my God, he was called up. That's not something you typically see on Shabbat. And so we keep walking, and then we get to Armenian, and the thing is, like, we still don't have any idea of what really happened. We know we're at war, but we have no clue. We do Armenian, and then throughout the minyan, we're like seeing our men one at a time leave, come back in uniform, and then leave. And then one of our women who took an aliyah with her newborn baby, she was like sobbing. And I knew it wasn't because she was getting an aliyah for the first time, which ordinarily would have been, she was sobbing because her husband is an elite soldier and he was called up. He's like an elite, like a commanding soldier. He actually just came home, thank God, but he's been in Gaza since they went in, and with a newborn baby and two other children. So then after Shabbat, we looked at our phones, and we were just like completely, just like the blood drained out of us, and we were like, to actually see what had happened. And the whole next day I was just in tears the entire, and then it's like you're trying to hide it from your kids, and you're also just like stuck to the phone and in tears. And then it just took for 2 weeks, talking about music, for 2 weeks, I couldn't make a sound. There was no music anywhere for 2 weeks. And then people started to do, and I started davening a lot and opening my mouth a little bit and like davening. And then people started like davening together and like making some kinds of music in this form. We had only 2 sirens where we live. The first was fake, but it was not fake. It was a false alarm, but it was very scary, and it lasted an hour and a half that we had to stay. We don't have a safe room in our house. We're building one now, but we don't have one because up where we live, there aren't typically many things. So many places don't. And then at some point, it started to feel like normal life.
Mm.
So we're like living normal life, but also cooking. Oh my God, the day after, like October 8th, I remember I went out to the supermarket and bought 3 kilo of ground beef. And I just made meatballs and pasta and like huge, massive amount of it. That was all I could do because I was like, people need food. Soldiers need food. They just came there. Nobody's ready for them. They didn't have anything. Soldiers need food. Wives whose husbands left for the army need food. And we've been cooking. That's, I'm in a group where every week we've got like our women whose husbands, they've been gone for 3 months. They're raising their children by themselves. And like, we ask them, I have someone who I report to and ask her every week, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And then we make sure they get what they need, whether it's someone to fold their laundry, help with the kids, bring them food. We had some losses in our like greater community. No one I was close to, but the father of my son's good friend was killed in Gaza. Brother of a good friend also killed in Gaza. And then today I've been like, I literally like the whole day I couldn't breathe, and I've been like crying most of the day because a dad of a kid in my son's gun was killed, and it's just, and he was one of those 21 soldiers, and seeing like waking up to see every day you're afraid to wake up to look at the news, waking up and seeing these 21 soldiers were killed, and then one of them is like my kid's friend's dad. So I literally, all of today, I've been holding my heart. My heart has been hurting, and I have had a knot in my stomach. But like other days, I'm just living life, and people are like, how are you? There's an expression in Hebrew, ma shlomcha. People ask, how are you? And they say, shlomi keshlom ami. Like, I am how my country is, how my nation is. And that's sometimes the only answer. You never know what's happening in anyone's life or mind, who they lost yesterday or today, or everyone's in a different position, but at the same time holding regular life.
Here in America, we have a little more of the luxury of being able to shield our kids from information. And even though half the kids at my son's day school are Israeli, and so that's is very close, but we can protect them. So how do you do that there, if you do? And if not, how do you process things with them?
It's really hard. It's like a really huge struggle to protect our kids, especially also there's signs everywhere about the hostages for the kids who can read well. Luckily, my kids don't read very well. And then they see things in Hebrew and they don't necessarily. So they were like the last to ask questions about those posters because they're still in English. I think it's like basically impossible. I had to at some point, we went to the dentist and he had the news on. And my son was like, what's all that? So I had to tell him, and I was like, so I just told him in the simplest terms. I said, basically, they knew we were at war. We had 2 sirens. They knew about missiles, but missiles are like less scary because if there's a missile, you hear a siren, you go to a safe room, and it's probably not going to hit you. And there's the Iron Dome. And so I explained all that, but all the other stuff, like when I had to finally tell my son that there were hostages, and that like when his friend's dad was killed, you just can't shield them from that. I didn't say with the hostages, I just tried to be I said, they took some people. Are they soldiers? And I was like, they're not soldiers. And he's okay. And I just waited for him to ask a question, and then I just answered it very simply. But yeah, you can't really.
Okay. First of all, I'm sorry about the loss in your community. It must be very hard. What can we do to help?
Yeah, so there's a million ways to help. One thing that I've been promoting is an organization called Soldiers Save Lives. And this money goes directly to what the soldiers need, the gear, ammunition, weapons. Basically, it was started by my very good friend's brother. He's in Jerusalem. He had a very different experience on Simchat Torah. He was getting texts from his friend who was at the Nova Festival saying, pray for me, I'm sorry. He got killed. The guy got killed. But my friend's brother, once he started to get this text, he got in a car, and he just got in a car with another friend, and they just drove down there to try to find their friend to see if he was alive, and they ran into a soldier driving the other way. And they just took guns. They like got guns, and they ran to a soldier, and the soldier was like, they were like, what's going on? And the soldier was like, we don't have any guns. We don't have enough of anything. And give me your guns. And they just gave the soldier all of their everything. The soldier went back and they left because they knew that they couldn't do anything more. And so after that experience, the soldiers then got stuff. Obviously, they have stuff. And this has been a very long war, and it's not over yet. They still need stuff. Soldiers need gear, and they need life-saving gear and all the stuff. Weapons, everything.
It's hard Ilana, for us here in America to believe at some level that the IDF, the greatest army in the history of the world, doesn't have enough guns. How is that possible? Is it because so many Miluim people in reserves came? They're just 100,000 extra people? Is that why?
Yeah, I think there's 300,000 extra people. Yeah, I think that's why. They're not like, I don't think that they were prepared for a war of this scale and to last this long. I imagine a lot of safety gear probably gets destroyed.
No, that's, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a logical question when someone hears that. Okay, so there'll be a link
Yeah.
below where you can donate. It all goes to the soldiers. It's great. What else?
Yeah. Other than that, there's like a million and a half other ways. Everybody is in need. Like people have had to leave their homes on short notice. They're living in wherever.
Does your
Um,
community, because I know a lot of people staying in hotels and a lot of people in Jerusalem are housing people both from the south and from the north. I guess you guys are closer north. So is that happening in your community, or is there some way that we can help around that?
Yeah, we're like more of a town that we're like 20,000 people. We're not so small. It's not like we took in, but yes, there's definitely people have come up to where we live from the south and come down from the north, and they're paying double here, for example, they're paying double rent. They still have their places in the south. We've given people, like in the beginning, no one was asking money for anything, but at some point people have to also live themselves. And yeah, so people who have rental units, they're renting them maybe for a little less, or but still, yeah, we've absorbed a lot of people from the south and the north.
Okay, great. So here's a question that I'm asking everyone I'm interviewing this month. What's your vision for the future of Israel?
Oh God. Like what would I like to happen? Or what I think
Well,
realistically?
I did a concert Saturday night, and I played this song called Shomer Israel. It's from Tachanun. It's a
Mhm.
Shlomo Carlebach version. Anyway, and I said, close your eyes. I want you to imagine, because if we can't see it in our minds, then where are we going? We don't know where we're going. We're just, which I understand we're in crisis, we're in trauma, so it's day to day, but we have to start trying to cultivate a vision in our minds of what we want, of what's possible. So maybe you haven't started yet. I know a lot of people, they can't see past today, which I totally understand and I honor that. But if you do have a vision for where we're headed,
Okay, I do. And there's things I'd like to see that I don't, unfortunately, don't think are possible. Peace between Israelis and Palestinians, I don't know. From what I'm seeing, I don't know that's possible, unfortunately. I don't know what the future is for Israel and Palestinians. What I would like to see that I think is possible and that is starting to happen is, first of all, the unity that has already started happening because of October 7th. I'd like to see that continue. Ultra Orthodox Jews like serving in the army and realizing this is their country too, for example. The schools, like my school, and there's also mixed Jewish Arab schools, a good number of them, that build these schools on the religious front and then on the Jewish Arab front. They build understanding between different groups. And these schools are not going to help the extremists on all fronts. They're not going to go to these schools. And even the people who are super solidly someplace else on really one very clear end, they're not going to go to these schools. But all the people in the middle who otherwise would be living in a bubble and not understanding the other, they might go to these schools and start to develop awareness of other groups in
and so
this country.
so these schools, they exist now, or you're saying you want to see more of them be developed.
They exist now, and I want to see more of them developing, getting larger, so that we can bring in the greatest number of people who are willing to have a conversation, whether it's on the religious front or on the Arab Jewish front or on both. And just more conversation where we live like Jews and Arabs. The Arabs are Bedouins, they're not Palestinians, but we live together. We
Mhm.
very much live together. And there's like a drama thing that's for kids from Kiryat Tivon, Jewish kids in Kiryat Tivon, and then Arab kids from Basmat Tivon, which is the neighboring town, Arab town. And they do a play together and they do the rehearsals and everything. Again, for the people who are willing to enter into this and have a conversation, I'd like to see more of that, because the more that we can expand those people, the people in the middle who want to have a conversation, I think it gives less power to the more extreme people who are not willing to have a conversation.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I also believe very much in the protection of our state. And I think I want to see a protected Israel. I really do. And I'm not willing to I don't want to sacrifice my own people for people that don't want peace. And so I would like to see people wanting peace in the Palestinian side, but it's not what I'm seeing right now.
What's interesting to me is the two-state solution. When I was growing up, I thought, yeah, that'll work. They have a state, we have a state, it's all good. And my brother used to say, but the problem is whenever we give away more land, they bring terrorism closer, which I honestly didn't believe until I saw the tunnels. I'm like, oh yeah, we gave that land 2005, 18 years ago, and they literally turned it into a terror factory. That's literally what the Biden administration is pushing for two-state solution. A lot of people in the UN, and it's a great concept. If the people on the other side would want a two-state solution,
If they want peace, we are ready to have peace.
no uncertain terms, that's not part of Hezbollah's charter, peace with Israel. That's not part of Hamas's charter. I've read them. It doesn't say we want a two-state solution.
They make it very clear what they want.
Clear. They want to destroy Israel.
However, the Israeli Arabs, very good number of them, not all of them, but many of them, like their life in Israel. They're doctors, they're pharmacists, every single pharmacist. They're lots of doctors. They hold high positions and they like their life here, and many of them love Israel and want to keep it safe.
Yeah, I think that's also something that's underrepresented in the news, which is that the Arabs that live in Israel, they have full citizenship, full rights. Like you just said, they serve in parliament, they're doctors, they're lawyers. That needs to be spoken about more, for sure. This whole concept of the apartheid state where the people that live there, it's like, it's completely ridiculous. I'm from South Africa, which is now even a worse rap. I know what apartheid actually is. That is not apartheid, ladies and gentlemen. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Okay, I'm stepping off my soapbox now. Let me get back to you. So, last question. And first of all, thank you for your time. I know you're very a busy mama. You have a lot going on, and you're helping a lot of people. So, this is my final question that I always ask on the Holy Sparks podcast, which is, what does the Jewish world need now most, and why?
Gosh, Israel. A really strong, healthy, safe Israel. One of the reasons why we made Aliyah 3.5 years ago was because we started to feel like America wasn't our home anymore. And that was before now. And even more so when people in America ask me, oh, how are you doing? Oh no. And for a while I was like, how are you doing? I'm in Israel. How are you doing? I think America's Jews and the Jews of the world, and quite honestly, the world, the whole Western world, let's say, needs Israel.
Why do we need Israel?
Because they are the only democratic country in the entire Middle East. Because we strengthen this area and because we are a safe place for Jews to come, or a safe place for anyone really, but it is a Jewish country. It was built for Jews to have one place that they won't get thrown out of. And as I see the soldiers in this country sacrificing themselves willingly for each other and for this country, this is what they're doing so that we can have a safe place for Jewish people all around the world to go, where this could be our last stop. And yeah.
Nahum, I got it. I also want to end with a blessing. And first, I want to thank you for your time, and Hashem should bless you and your family with peace, shalom, and in your community and stretching beyond. That you should not only feed yourselves and all of the families that need it, but nourish Am Yisrael, and that the war should end peacefully. We should have peace, which is what we want, and that your all of your skills can help Am Yisrael. You have such a incredible skill set to serve, and that you should continue to do that b'simcha, and hopefully we'll see you sometime soon.
Definitely.